today's topic will be on positive well-being and self-efficacy. This is really helping our students to develop that inner drive. Now, it's easy said than done. Like I said, this is a topic very near and dear to our heart, but we don't actually talk about it enough. Part of the reason is because it's actually very difficult. We don't know how to get started, to start developing that inner drive. So Sunny today will walk us through frameworks with case studies so that we not just have this cognitive notion, but actually make this quite actionable to develop the inner drive for our high schoolers. This is super important as they transition from adolescence to adulthood, when they are no longer going to be sheltered by our parents, but enter the college and be more independent. So we will spend 35 minutes to 45 minutes on that. Then I will spend about 10 minutes and quickly tell you some of the latest and greatest provided from Kyros.ai and what we are doing to support our high schoolers and the families on the journey to your dream college with ease and the confidence. So let me tell you a little bit about Sunny. Sunny is just one of these straight A students. She did her bachelor's degree with honors in psychological and the brain science from Dartmouth College. She then went to Harvard, completed her master's degree for School of Education. And following that, she worked at Stanford as the former residence dean. She oversaw 1,200 plus students every year, freshmen at Stanford, and working with them on day-to-day basis and really help them to grow and to develop that self.
So how do we get our college students there? How do they embody the various adjectives that we just threw out? How do we get there as successful college students? And then how do we get there? How do we support them to get to that space as parents, educators, administrators, coaches, people, anyone in our young people's support network? So these are the two main grounding questions as we move through our conversation today. Next slide, please. So to ground our conversation, before I introduce some very real life case studies, we are going to use two Harvard Graduate School of Education-led frameworks and reports as guides. They're called Turning the Tide 1, and then the second one is Turning the Tide 2. Turning the Tide 1 came out in 2016, and it basically was a consortium of 150 colleges, universities across the United States, and it was the first report that brought all of these universities together. The college admissions deans all signed off on these two reports, arguing actually that what's important in a college admissions process is not the quantity of students' achievements or long brag sheets, but the quality of their ethical and academic engagement and achievement. It's the first comprehensive effort of its kind. A large group of colleges publicly and collectively sent a message that they seek applicants who care about others and their communities and who are engaged and energized by meaningful learning. So it's really about how do we promote meaningful contributions to others, community service with the public and greater good in mind out of our teenagers. How do we assess students' ethical engagement and contributions in a way that takes into account their holistic character and also their family context, including race, culture, and class? And then how do we redefine achievement in ways that both level the playing field for economically diverse students and above all, reduce excessive achievement pressure? So this report came out because college admissions, these colleges across the United States were recognizing that students were stressed out, feeling so much pressure that was undue, that young people should not be experiencing, and padding their resumes too much with things that were not that important at the end of the day. And this report called out parents, and in it, if any of you are curious to read it, you can just Google Turning the Tide 1, Harvard Graduate School of Education. It's about 30 to 40 pages, but I highly encourage any of you who are curious and who have the time to look into it. But it really called out saying that many parents failed to be ethical role models during the admissions process by allowing teens to mislead on applications, letting their own voice intrude in the application essays, hiring expensive tutors and coaches without any sense of equity or fairness, treating their teens' peers simply as competitors for college spots, or failing to nurture in their teen any sense of gratitude for the privilege of attending a four-year college. And so it sounds a bit harsh. However, it's something that's, data has shown that these are things that are actually happening. Next slide, please. And so Turning the Tide 2, which came out in March 2019, was really focusing on two targeted areas, naming what these colleges and universities feel are some of the most influential aspects of a teenager's life when they're applying to college. Their parents or whoever their parental figures are have great influence, as well as college admissions. And so the next few slides are going to be highlighting some case studies that I myself and my colleagues at Stanford have experienced in working with young people in why it's important to cultivate this ethical character development, authenticity, helping your student think about what they value, how they want to contribute in meaningful ways, and importantly, modeling and encouraging gratitude. So it reframes, especially students who come from middle, upper class communities. Oftentimes they could feel entitled to their resources, the many opportunities and resources they're given. But how do we reframe that potential sense of entitlement to a feeling of gratitude and gratefulness, appreciating what they are offered, and also in the future paying it forward. So that's what we're going to be looking at today in terms of actual stories and scenarios that I've come across and that my colleagues have come across at Stanford. Next slide, please. So how do we get there? So we're going to be highlighting through these case studies some examples of real life scenarios, and then also highlighting some pitfalls that could be barriers along the way that definitely can be course corrected in a young person, in a student, if they have good role models, they have good, parental figures, they have good peer influences. So all of these things, all of the negative things that we potentially talk about today are definitely course correctable, and also great learning experiences for your students. So we're going to highlight, so the first case study that we're going to delve into is about overparenting, aka helicopter parenting, aka being tiger parents, which I think all of you are very familiar with these phrases. So the first case study is Brian is a Stanford freshman. At Stanford, we lovingly call our freshman Frosh. He created a profitable eBay business selling computer parts out of his home bedroom as a high school student, has an impressive college admissions resume, which of course helped get him into Stanford. However, when he arrives autumn quarter, within the first 2 to 3 months, he becomes quickly overwhelmed by his college dorm life, in meeting so many new peers, trying to build up his new friend group and social circle, and also very overwhelmed by the challenging classes he's taking at Stanford. And on top of all of this, his high school girlfriend recently broke up with him. His dorm RA, who's an upperclassman, a senior who helps support the residents in the community dorm, ends up referring Brian to one of the undergraduate residence deans, because Brian had expressed a lot of anxiety talking to this RA one day. And so Brian meets with the dean and shares that he has been struggling with anxiety throughout high school and probably needs medication, which his former primary care physician recommended at one point. But now he's in a new environment and feels, okay, maybe I finally need to, access this resource. And so his dean suggests, hey, why don't you access counseling and psychological services on campus? And this is present across, this service is present across all colleges, universities in the US. And then also, why don't you make an appointment with your PCP, and then they can refer you to a psychiatrist. So in this conversation, Brian is, very articulate. He's sharing his very kind of formidable resume. And so obviously he's a smart kid. But when his dean suggests that he access, making a doctor's appointment or access counseling services, Brian looks very confused and actually reveals that he has no idea how to make a doctor's appointment, who to call, what to say, where to even begin. And of course, as you can imagine, the dean is in their mind probably like, the student's really bright, but is a little bit surprised that they don't know the basics of how to make a doctor's appointment, which is a basic need, taking care of his health. So in that conversation, the dean helps walk Brian through the various wellness resources and actually teaches and coaches him and guides him in how to make a doctor's appointment so that he can get the medication he needs to help with to alleviate his anxiety and stress. So I'll marinate on, how that could have happened where Brian found himself in this situation. So the second case study is Cindy and Hannah are two frosh who are roommates in an all frosh dorm at Stanford. They soon realize that they are very different people with very different preferences and living habits, and they don't get along very well right off the bat. This is again, autumn quarter, a couple months in. They live in quite a small one room double. So it's one room and two students live in that space. So Hannah immediately goes to the undergraduate dean to ask for a reassignment to move into a new space with a new roommate or just a space of her own, because she's like, I don't get along with Cindy, I want a new space. And then, however, she soon learns that freshmen, frosh, do not get easily reassigned, and they have to go through a conflict resolution, conflict management process they have to try this out first before even being considered to do a reassignment by the dean. And so Hannah tries to, get out of it, tries to, talk her way out of it. But unfortunately, this is how the process is at Stanford, at least. And so she very begrudgingly agrees to participate. And then reveals, she's like, I don't know how to talk to my roommate. I'm not sure how to resolve this thing between us and our differences. Can you coach me? Or what can I do what do I say to this person? And so the dean starts coaching her, meets with her weekly, and starts coaching her through how to engage Cindy in, effective, positive conflict resolution skills and language. So hopefully they can get to a place where they don't have to be friends, but at least they can be good roommates to each other. So they embark on that process, which took about 2 quarters to achieve. But they eventually do work it out through weekly coaching and through engaging with professionals and their RAs who help facilitate and mediate and guide them. So next slide, please. So basically, as you're listening to this, some of the key takeaways I found when I've been reflecting as a former undergraduate dean with my colleagues is that parents have amazing intentions. We know many, or all parents care about their children, and they want to pave their way for their children to lead the smoothest life possible on their way to college. However, when they land in college, they may be potentially harming their students' sense of self-efficacy and independence during college and beyond if they do everything for their student. Students may oftentimes find themselves when they arrive in college, lacking proper skills to take care of themselves and their basic needs properly and independently. Because when you're 18 plus, you have the students, their information is FERPA protected, which means when parents, guardians call in, 99% of the time we cannot share, private information about the students because they're technically adults. So it really is up to the student to be able to develop those skills to take care of themselves. And oftentimes students, when they show up in college, they may lack effective interpersonal communication skills and have trouble managing relationships without the help of adults. So basically, key takeaway is help your students develop these skills early and effectively.